Well, this sucks, but maybe not as much as you think, considering the Democrats just violated your rights, Virginia. Yes, the Democrats pushed the yes vote for gerrymandering across the finish line on Tuesday, by hook or by crook. But there's going to be a very steep cost to their victory, and the courts, of course, have yet to have their say. In today's episode, we'll cover the gerrymandering vote in Virginia, the legal battles that are sure to follow, and the true cost to Democrats for trampling on the rights of Virginians. And be sure to stay to the end, because there's a really interesting idea floating around about how President Trump can end the reign of terror waged by the suburbanites of Northern Virginia, aka my neighbors. I like this idea. By the way, hi, I'm Terry. I am a fed-up Gen Xer and a ticked-off Virginian who worked for years behind the scenes of conservative media and decided right now is the time to get out in front of the camera and talk the truth. Welcome to Smart Girl Politics. Oh, and by the way, while you're here, hit the subscribe button, okay? Let's just dive right into it. I wanted to read the question that Virginians were asked to weigh in on with a yes or a no. Here is the question, and with a little bit of commentary by yours truly. Should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly now of important note here is that the General Assembly means Democrats. Right now, both houses of the Virginia General Assembly are controlled by Democrats. And of course, we have Abigail Spanberger as our governors. When you read General Assembly, what you mean is the Democrats. Should Virginia Democrats be allowed to do this? To temporarily adopt new congressional districts. Nothing temporary about it. They're grabbing the seats, they're stealing the seats, and they're not going to let them go. So to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census. So that is the question that we were asked to answer. If you say yes, that means you want the Democrats to have full control over redistricting. If you say no, you like the map as it is. Now, I wanted to just give a brief overview of the results. So we are going to go over to Fox News.
Approving an overhaul of congressional districts that favor the left.
The outcome could have major national implications when the midterms roll around. Madeline Rivera is live in Washington with the latest for us. Maddie.
Hi, good morning. So the new map takes effect immediately. The plan changes Virginia from 6 Democratic and 5 Republican House districts to a 10-to-1 split. The 4 left-leaning seats that Dems could pick up would give them an edge in the midterms as the GOP tries to cling on to a tight House majority. The vote has reignited criticisms of hypocrisy on both sides. Democrats say the redistricting effort is necessary to counter President Trump's push for GOP states to redraw their maps. Former President Obama saying, "Congratulations, Virginia." Republicans are trying to tilt the midterm elections in their favor, but they haven't done it yet. Thanks for showing us what it looks like to stand up for our democracy and fight back. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, who once spoke out against partisan gerrymandering, is defending the effort in her state. She says, as we watch other states go along with those demands without voter input, Virginians refuse to let that stand. We responded the right way at the ballot box. Spanberger says the move is temporary, but it is expected to last until at least 2030 when the new census happens. The vote's not exactly a landslide. Check this out. The yes vote has a narrow lead of about 3 percentage points. Former Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin suggests that shows how divided folks are about this issue. He says the race was much closer than the left expected because Virginians know a 10-to-1 map is not Virginia. I urge the Virginia Supreme Court to rule against this unconstitutional process that will disenfranchise millions of Virginians. There have been multiple lawsuits, including whether the ballot language was appropriate and whether the process to place the amendment on the ballot was legal. Lawrence Ainsley and Brian.
Okay.
All right, we'll see.
We'll get to the legality of everything in just a minute, so put a pin in that. But I wanted to just note, we saw the numbers there. It's roughly a +3 win, which is not great for the Democrats. I think you could say 50% against, 50% for. So the results of the gerrymandering referendum themselves show how split almost evenly Virginia is. The fact that 50% of Virginians don't want this, and now they're going to be forced to have 90% Democrat representation in Congress. The results from yesterday speak to why the gerrymandering was not fair and unnecessary, and why it shows that the Democrats are lying about absolutely everything to do with this. And speaking of unfair, here's my favorite. I love Scott Jennings. We're going to let him give his opinion on what happened as a guy that is a very astute observer of politics.
Virginia literally had the fairest maps in the nation. They had a 6-5 map, 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans. In terms of proportional representation, they had the fairest map in the nation that was drawn, by the way, by an independent commission that the voters asked for just a few years ago. Now they will have the least fair maps in the nation. And I'm not surprised that the yes vote won. They had all the money and all the lies. And sometimes in politics, when you got those two things, you can put something over the line. Even something as egregious as this whole thing has driven Spamberger's approval ratings down into the toilet. She lied to the people of Virginia. They had to write a ballot question that was a joke. They drew maps that were a joke. Now you're going to have huge chunks of rural Virginia represented by 5 or 6 Democrats who all live in northern Virginia within about 15 miles of each other. It's a complete joke. Everybody knows it. And there's a reason that all these national Democrats and all their money came into Virginia because, they don't really care about the people of Virginia. They just care about power.
So despite the massive amount of money that was spent by the left in Virginia to win, like I said, by hook or by crook, there were some real positive signs, some overperformance by the GOP in other areas of the state. Let's find out more about that overperformance.
In Virginia. So this is a state in November of 2025 that went by 15 points to the Democrats for governor and about 8 points for attorney general. Last night, this was a 3-point race. That's actually a 3-point overperformance of the Trump 2024 historic performance in Virginia. So just as a baseline for all the Democrats crowing this morning, if Republicans perform anywhere near on average the way they did in Virginia last night, we not only add seats to the Senate, but we add seats to the House, and we have a historic midterm. It was very close last night. There's a backlash to the fact that they were not honest, and the same is going to be true in November. They don't have policies to run on. They don't have a vision to run on. We're going to make them litigate the question of their policies in November. And again, if it turns out the way it did last night, Democrats are not going to win the majority in.
This was a very good performance by the GOP, despite the fact that not a lot of money was spent to bolster the no side. It was a very, very good turnout. I wish I could blow this up a little bit, but here's what the map looks like. To talk about the overperformance, to talk about how well the no side did last night. We remember that just in November, I believe that Spamberger won by plus 14 points. So she's lost quite a bit here. Look at that map. Does it scream to you that Democrats should have 10 of the 11 congressional seats? On this map, orangey colors are the no and the bluish colors are the yeses. As you can see, it's very predictable. Northern Virginia, some Richmond, some Virginia Beach. These numbers right here tell me exactly why gerrymandering was not necessary and why this is all just a lie by the Democrats. And this really says it all. This is fascinating and troubling. One single region in Virginia determined an outcome for the entire Commonwealth. Is this what the radical left calls democracy and fairness? Hey, Fairfax, no kings. Look at that. The gerrymandering is happening because those old farts who are my neighbors, these white liberals who get out and do the no kings rallies, they're the same people who now have appointed themselves the kings and queens of Virginia and think that they're going to tell the rest of the state what to do. It's outrageous, but it tells you everything you need to know right here. And this goes back to my point that I'm going to make at the end about the idea floating about how President Trump can just blow this to smithereens. Now, if you're wondering the victory lap being taken by the Democrats, I'm just going to show you one screen. That's it. I'm going to share one thing from the contemptible, the very odious Louise Lucas, who is the president pro tempore of the Virginia State Senate. Now, if you don't know, our girl Louise, she runs a weed shop, I think in Portsmouth, something like that. So she is going to fill her bong with Republican tears. So that's where the Democrats are at. Now, let's get to the important part of this. Is any of this legal? Let's take a listen. So this was a report from just the day before the referendum. It was obvious that there were going to be legal challenges because there were legal challenges before the referendum, before the date was even confirmed. But the Virginia Supreme Court punted until after the referendum, but we'll get to them in just a minute. Before we had the wonderful Jason Miyares as our Attorney General here in Virginia, a few terms ago, we had Ken Cuccinelli, who was also a great one. Now, he laid out what the legal challenges are going to be. It roughly falls into two camps. The wording of the amendment, which falls pretty much on the word fairness, and then the process by which Democrats in the General Assembly even got this referendum to happen. So let's listen to Ken. The yes vote has won Virginia's redistricting referendum, but the legal fight is just beginning. 4 Virginia constitutional challenges are now teed up. The first 3 challenges up to the amendment process itself. First passage was invalid. The amendment was taken up during a special session convened in 2024 for budget purposes. The General Assembly's own call to the governor limited the session's scope. Expanding it to include a constitutional amendment on redistricting required a 2/3 vote that never occurred. A Tazewell County judge found this action void ab initio. The second one requires that after first passage, a proposed amendment be referred to the General Assembly at its first regular session held after the next general election. It's a lot of words of members of the House of Delegates. An election must intervene between first and second passage. Here, first passage occurred during the election cycle, not before an intervening one. This is an important one. The Article 12, Section 1 of the Virginia State Code requires the amendment, the one that we just voted about yesterday, to be submitted to voters not sooner than 90 days after final passage by the General Assembly. The timeline from second passage to the April 21st vote did not satisfy this requirement, plus one challenge to the proposed maps. Article 2, Section 6 requires that every electoral district shall be composed of contiguous and compact territory. The proposed congressional maps violate this contiguity requirement rather badly. Next stop, court. Stay tuned. So there are obviously going to be some challenges to this. Here's the kicker, though. A lot of this hinges on what the state Supreme Court of Virginia, SCOVA, does. So let me share a little information about SCOVA with you. All 7 justices of the Supreme Court of Virginia are elected by a majority vote of both chambers of the Virginia General Assembly to 12-year terms. This legislative appointment process applies to all justices who can be reelected for additional terms with vacancies filled by the legislature or interim government appointments. In other words, they rely on the state legislature, aka the Democrats right now, to keep their jobs. So do you think that these people who punted are going to decide against, they're going to go against the Democrats on this one? They're not. So I'm advising people that yes, there may be a judicial remedy to this problem, but maybe not through SCOVA, because they're in pretty tight with the Democrats here. Now let's move on to talk about the fallout. I think some of the best news here is obviously in what the results were and how well the red part of Virginia turned out, made their voices heard. That is great news. We don't like the outcome, but that is great news. And Jason Miyares, who the aforementioned, who was our previous Attorney General here and has been the leading voice against this amendment. Let's hear what he had to say. He's trying to rally the troops a little bit today. Yesterday's results will prove to be a Pyrrhic victory for Democrats in Virginia. The raw anger is palpable. And now Abigail Spanberger, Don Scott, Louise Lucas, and the rest of the Richmond Democrats will own this. Governor Spanberger lied to voters, and they won't easily forget that. Now, every insane leftist bill/vote by the radicals that will emerge from these districts will be because of her deceit. The Democrats may believe they silenced millions of conservative voices yesterday, but they did not. A conservative comeback is building to rectify this deceit and unconstitutional power grab. I agree wholeheartedly with the Attorney General there. I do think a sleeping giant has been awakened. We've seen it before. We've seen it. It's happening in California right now. They may end up with 2 Republicans running for governor in the general election. I feel it just from the comments that I get here on YouTube. I can feel the anger growing. Some people want to flee and some people don't. I've been here a long time. I'm not ready to cede this state to the leftists that have come in and destroyed it. Now, an important number here is the amount spent. I'm not going to play Jesse Waters down there, but we'll read a little bit about this. Holy crap, despite constantly hearing about how much cash Republicans have, Democrats are set to pass their 10D1R Virginia map by a narrow 3 points per New York Times, but outspent Republicans by more than double. Democrats spent $56 million, Republicans $25 million. They had to spend a heck of a lot of money to win 4 seats, and they haven't won them yet. Okay, we still have legal battles, and we still have to have an election. They have to go through primaries. It's going to be ugly. Oh my God, these Democrat primaries are going to be insane. I am here for it. They had to spend a lot of money. Now, individual candidates for Democrats have done well with fundraising, but overall Democrats are getting lapped by Republicans on how much they're raising this cycle. Trump is a fundraising machine. So they do not have deep reserves right now. So I just say that is a bit of a victory for the Republicans because the Democrats had to spend a lot of money. Now, the other part of this is how little Republicans spent on this race. And now that we see how close the results were, the question has to be asked. Could no have won if Republicans had actually spent some money here? And I don't really love to go into the negative part of this so much, but I'm going to share a screen and read a little bit with you about what the Republicans' priorities may have been here. Look at this headline, revealed. RNC blew Virginia referendum due to lavish Cornyn spending and misplaced priorities. I was hearing some prognostications that thought yes was going to win by double digits, and that didn't happen. So we got something going here, Virginia, something good. Now, the RNC did not have our back. Republicans on the national level did not have our back. We all know that the state Republican Party is controlled by consultants. It's neutered. It's ineffective. It's why we're where we are. But the RNC has cash, and they're spending it in gobs and gobs on the Texas Senate race, which is, of course, going to a runoff between John Cornyn, who's the incumbent, and Ken Paxton, another Republican, who is extremely popular. They are spending all of their money on the Cornyn race. None left for Virginia. Now, I speak to you as a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I'm happy to call them out. What in God's name were they thinking? Do you see those numbers? Do you see the disparity in how much was spent and the closeness of the result? Imagine if they had taken a little bit of money away from Texas, the Texas Senate race, and put it in Virginia. They never put money in Virginia. They've let us sink. They've abandoned us a long time ago. So something to think about as we try to rebuild here in Virginia. I hate the result, but I'm encouraged by the number of people that turned out. The Republicans are not coming to help us or save us or do anything. We have to save ourselves, which leads me to how are we going to save ourselves? Here's a thought. Here's the reality facing Virginia now. The court challenges to the rigged maps are all almost certainly doomed to fail, which we talked about. There's no chance the court allowed the election to proceed just to overturn it, so we should just forget about that. Sorry, but it's the truth. All Republicans have left now is local politics. Again, the RNC is not coming to save us. We must become a guerrilla-style party that wins scrappy and slowly, stacks up wins at the local level before moving to state and then federal. Finally, and this is most important, we need to start preparing for 2030 now. It's 100% certain that Democrats are going to try to lock in their 10-1 map permanently. We could be one step ahead of them. And about that idea about how President Trump can flip things, here is another article from the National Pulse. Former counsel for President Donald J. Trump, Chad R. Mizell, has suggested he should counteract Virginia's Democrat-initiated congressional gerrymandering efforts by issuing an executive order putting parts of Virginia back under federal control for the first time since 1847. There's a lot of nuances and things and rules here, but here's Chad Mizell, a former counsel to President Trump. It will not only neutralize the president's political opponents' move to stack Congress against him, thus protecting him from another likely sham impeachment, but most importantly, it will save a great number of red Virginians from having their votes canceled out by deep blue DC adjacent liberals. What he's saying here is there is a way that people are talking about through executive order that President Trump could take Arlington and Alexandria and make it part of DC again, which it once was prior to 1847. So the slogan is make DC square again. It would change everything to reduce the impact of Northern Virginia on Virginia. So something to think about. I want to know how all of you are feeling today, so please drop me a comment down in the comment section. If you're north, south, east, west, I don't care. I want to know how you're feeling. I feel bleh here in Northern Virginia, but I always feel bleh here in Northern Virginia. And I feel terrible for other parts of the states for what my neighbors have done. So let me know. I just want to know that how you're feeling. And I especially want you to know you're not alone in all this. There's a lot of upset people, and that's what we take and turn into something good. And if you're interested in hearing how a Democrat accidentally spilled the beans on what they're really doing with gerrymandering, you're going to want to watch this next video. And I'll see you guys very soon. Take care. Drop me a comment.